I'm gonna be honest with you, when I first heard of Tainted Grail, I really didn't see the hype. Another Skyrim clone, I thought. Been there, done that. And after the whole Oblivion remaster hype train, I've honestly felt pretty burnt out by the whole genre. But after finally giving Tainted Grail a shot this past week, I have to say it surprised me in the best way possible. Because Tainted Grail: The Fall of Avalon isn't just a Skyrim or Oblivion copy. It's something much weirder, much darker, and in many ways something better. Baggage included. Before we dive into it though, if you enjoyed this video, do me a favor and drop a like, and if you're new here, subscribe for more RPG content. Also, thank you to Awakened Realms for providing me with a review copy for this video. Now, the very first thing I noticed with Tainted Grail: The Fall of Avalon is just how stripped back and minimal the main menu is. There's no crazy sound effects, no explosion of visual effects, just clean options and a basic UI. Now you can tell that this isn't a massive budget production, but it also doesn't try to pretend that it is. There's something oddly refreshing about that level of honesty just right out the gate. The character creator is sort of the same thing. It's pretty bare bones. You get a few templates, you can mess around with some sliders, but don't expect to spend 45 minutes perfecting your chin angle. It gets the job done, kind of, and that's a recurring theme in this game. Function over flash. Now, you start in a jail cell, which is obviously an Oblivion callback, and yeah, it does trigger that nostalgia button. But unlike Oblivion, the moment a guard walks in, I notice this weird ghosting effect around him, and I'm not sure what's the issue here, and I tried to mess around with some settings to no avail. However, it got better once I got out of the intro section. And speaking of performance, this thing runs pretty well. I was honestly expecting jank right from the get-go, but frame rate has mostly been smooth, loading screens are lightning fast, and for a game this size, that actually surprised me. Especially during a transition from the intro dungeon to another instance. I legit thought that I was still stuck on a loading screen, staring at some concept art, but no, it was actually the next area, and I love that. That's just instant immersion. Now, when you swing your weapon for the first time, you'll know that this isn't the spongy hack-and-slash Elder Scrolls combat we've all learned to tolerate. The very first zombie in that prison corridor clanged against my club like a sack of chainmail steel on bone. Every weapon I've played with, especially the two-handers, feel heavy and mean, right up there with Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 for raw impact. Like, blunt weapons literally bounce off of enemies and the audio is super crunchy. Now the systems layered on top push the brutality even further, because there's a proper parry window, follow-up executions, and even a quick shove that'll send smaller mobs plummeting off of cliffs, which is always satisfying. Fights are also dangerous. Low-level bandits can finish you off if you mistime a block, and open-world mini-bosses like Lonely Knights and Stone Golems will flatten you in seconds if you wander in unprepared.
It was at this moment that he knew. He fucked up.
That is to say, I have died a lot, but I've also grinned like an idiot a lot. However, if melee isn't your specialty, well, you can summon something that is. You can summon monsters, skeletons, and even master assassins who drink her own potions mid-brawl, and they're strong enough to solo lesser bosses and at least buy you breathing room against some of the tougher ones. Add to that, we have a campfire system. You can drop a fire anywhere, cook a meal, spend your level up points, and you've got a light survival loop that keeps you thinking about food, progression, and rest without turning the game into a chore. However, I gotta say, not everything lands. Movement feels kind of floaty without any head bob, some early boss animations spasm like stop-motion puppets, and archery summons occasionally fire backwards, which is indeed a look. But moment to moment, combat and survival fuse into a tense, crunchy rhythm that left me more engaged than any hit trade until the bar is empty encounters I've had in Tamriel. Now, if there's one thing that really caught me off guard, it was how good it felt just to be in this world. You know, I went in expecting a gloomy Skyrim knockoff with a filter slapped over it, but instead, Tainted Grail's world surprised me by being weirdly beautiful. And no, I'm not just talking about having pretty lighting and good fog. It's got that same feeling that made Skyrim so immersive back in the day. You know, the moments where the music dips, the sun breaks through the trees, and you just stop to look at everything for a second. Also, each region feels distinct and there are proper biome shifts as you move through the story. The second area, Kunacht, was more sunnier than I expected given the creeping red death plague, and I genuinely liked how the tone changes depending on where you are. The cursed castle, Sangramore, was a standout too. It's moody, super strange, and eventually blending into this bizarre grayscale storybook sequence that felt like I was pulled into a dream. Now, about the weirdness, which is this creeping curse that's encroaching upon the land, it's more of a light mechanic than a core pillar. It functions a bit like a battle royale danger zone, because you can literally see the edge of it at night, marked by runic particle effects, and stepping into it means stronger enemies, more supernatural creatures, and a general "you're not supposed to be here" atmosphere. Now, mechanically speaking, it's more like Dying Light's nighttime and not a total transformation of how you play, and I guess I wish they went a little harder in this area. However, when you combine it with the ambient throat singing music and the general strangeness of what you run into, and you get a world that feels genuinely unique and very freaky. Now, exploration itself is rewarding too. You can stumble across optional bosses, dig up buried items with a shovel, or pray at shrines to receive blessings and loot. But not everything about the world design works perfectly either. Visual bugs are frequent, you have textures stretching in first person, frog monsters stuck in trees, and the occasional broken quest step that requires a reload. Some regions also suffer from the classic jank through ambition problem, where the scale outpaces the polish. But honestly, I'll take janky ambition over soulless polish any day. You see, exploration here works because it feels like you're journeying through a strange and otherworldly dimension. Because, well, you kind of are. It often feels like you're barely clinging to reality, especially during the nights, where unstoppable armored monsters start roaming and you're just hoping they don't find you.
Why are you running?
There's mystery, there's danger, and there's just enough whimsy mixed in with the terror to make it feel really fresh. And in that sense, it does what so many RPGs forget to do. It makes wandering around fun again, sort of like what KCD2 did earlier this year. Now, to be honest with you, I was fully prepared to tune out whatever plot this game had going on, because generally these types of games lead with gameplay first. Usually what that means is clunky exposition, stiff delivery, and lore that sounds like someone fed Arthurian fanfiction through a name generator. But no, Tainted Grail's story is actually interesting. You see, and here's just a tiny spoiler from the start of the game, you carry King Arthur's soul. Basically, his fractured essence is inside of you and your job is to find the scattered pieces of what made him whole. That is the premise of the game. And the way this unfolds is a lot darker, stranger, and more philosophical than I expected. There's a real atmosphere of decay and mystery, like something terrible happened long ago and now the world's just limping forward, trying to pretend things are okay. As for dialogue, it's actually surprisingly strong, and I mean it. Most NPCs are well written, with actual personality and quirks. There's a necromancer you can talk into offing himself using philosophical arguments about death, which is hilarious, and another where yet another guy jumps off of a cliff because he thought that you were there to take his place.
Farewell.
It's completely bonkers. Now, the voice acting is also generally really good. Some characters really sell their lines, like way above what you'd expect from a game like this. Unfortunately, this has a tendency to collide with the, subpar animations. For example, at the end of a particular questline, one NPC literally starts laughing so hard she cries, and her face just, it does this. And look, I love the actor's effort here, she's really giving it her all and it's pretty charming, but it's also this kind of inconsistency that breaks the immersion sometimes. Like, the writing is solid, no doubt, but the delivery coupled with the terrible animations makes the game swing wildly in feeling like a current generation gem, and then to a PS3 launch title in 0 seconds flat. Again though, still, I'd much rather have strong writing with mixed presentation than the other way around. Because there are some genuinely memorable characters here, like Cillian, who's probably one of the most hilariously unhinged quest givers I've met in years. His dialogue is so bizarre and blood-obsessed that it feels like you've wandered into his fever dream by accident.
Sinon the Giant. He used to rob travelers on the road, and if he wasn't satisfied with what they had, he'd crack their heads open. Now his hefty body is lying in pieces in a puddle of blood somewhere. Oh, sorry. No time for daydreaming, right? Here's your money.
I also like the co-protagonist himself, King Arthur. I think he's pretty well written, and I've been surprised to see him show up as much as he does throughout the story. He feels like a character who decided to be a king because his people needs him to be, and not so much because he's power hungry. I found myself very fond of this portrayal of the legendary monarch, and I think his characterization is really where the game shines. So yeah, if you're here for a good story, well, I'm glad to say that you're gonna find one. It's weird, it's messy, and the animations aren't perfect, but it's compelling, and in this genre, that counts for a lot. So, Tainted Grail: The Fall of Avalon has been a genuine surprise, and interestingly enough, I've enjoyed this far more than the recent Oblivion remaster. Not because it does everything better, because it doesn't. The animations are rough, the polish isn't always there, some systems feel janky or underbaked, and at times it's very clearly a game made by a smaller team with a more limited budget. But where it matters, in atmosphere, exploration, combat feel, build variety, and storytelling, the game absolutely delivers. It's not perfect, far from it, it definitely needs a lot more polish, but it's personal and unique. So if you've been starved for an open world RPG with real atmosphere, meaningful exploration, and some jank that you can laugh with rather than rage at, then yeah, Tainted Grail is absolutely worth your time. Also, it'll cost you below $50, so hey, you're getting a lot of game for your money. But that's gonna be it for today. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below as always. This has been Mr. Holton, signing off.